So we're going to dive into it. First team up is the Philadelphia 76ers. Keith, I think this is going to be, well, I mean, not to spoil anything, but perhaps the best team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they are definitely going to be much improved. So just for a little bit of structure with the show, we're going to go through basically the same kind of details on each thing, and then we'll dive into some discussion. So what we'll start off with is who did they lose? Who did they add? So who they lost, Jimmy Butler. Haywood Highsmith was one of their two-way players. Amir Johnson, Furkan Korkmaz, Boban Marjanovic, TJ McConnell, Greg Monroe, J.J. Redick, and Jonathan Simmons. So obviously the bigger losses there, Butler and Redick, everybody else a role player at best. And then who they added, Al Horford, the big free agent signing, Raul Neto, Kyle O'Quinn, Josh Richardson. He came over via the Butler sign and trade. Matisse Thybulle, who they drafted. In the draft, they converted Shake Milton from a two-way contract to a standard deal. They are two-way players. They've signed both and filled both of those spots with Norval Pell and Marial Shayok. And then Ben Simmons, not an addition, but he did get the full max deal extension with that. That doesn't kick in till next year, but I want to make sure we talk about it. And a couple of things with that. No player option on that deal, and then it has language where if he makes all NBA first team, it'll bump up to the 30% max from the 25% tier, and if he makes second team, it comes down just a little bit. If he makes third team, comes down just a little bit off of that. So a good creative contract there to balance. As far as their cap goes for these guys, they are, let me pull it up there. I mean, they're over the cap.
They're capped out.
And completely capped out, and then they use their room exception to re-sign Mike Scott, who is coming back to them. So nothing left but minimums. They really have two roster spots left on the standard. They do have Chris Kamaji, 7'4" guy who I know we both saw out in Las Vegas from Florida State. He is going to come in and but he's on an Exhibit 10, so that's kind of a training camp deal. So a couple roster spots to still play with there, but those will be minimum signings at best for Philadelphia. My guess is a shooter. So what I want to kick to you, Trevor, starting five, what do you expect it to be? And then how do you think they fill out the rest of the rotation?
So, yeah, I mean, I think that the starting five for the Philadelphia 76ers is pretty well set in stone. I mean, there's no real question marks here. There's a lot of teams we're going to be talking about where we can say, oh, well, there's going to be a battle for this spot or that spot. Yeah. The Sixers are pretty much set. And I mean, really, if you just look at their salaries, that tells you who their starters are going to be. You're going to have Ben Simmons at point guard, Josh Richardson at the 2, Tobias Harris at the 3, Al Horford at the 4, even though I think we will see him a little bit at the 5 as well, and Joel Embiid, of course, starting at center, and that's a heck of a starting 5. I mean, look, it's not often that you see a team lose a star like Jimmy Butler and rebound the way that they have, and in creating a team that I think actually could be better than last year's squad, even though they lost Jimmy Butler. So really impressive stuff from them on that front. But like you mentioned, you probably need some shooting here, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see them target a shooter with their last roster spot either.
Yeah, they were trying to get Kyle Korver. They were making big plays for him. And ultimately it came down to Korver liked Philadelphia. He liked Milwaukee, just a greater comfort level with Mike Budenholzer, who once built an entire offense around Kyle Korver's shooting and skill set in Atlanta. So, so that's where Korver headed off to Milwaukee. We'll get into that one deeper. So, my guess is they might even leave one of those final 2 roster spots open into the season and just continue to chase shooting. It wouldn't surprise me. Maybe Korkmaz has an agreement to go back overseas, I believe, back to Turkey to play, but he has it's not signed because he's still seeing about an NBA deal. And if he can get that, then I think he will return to Philadelphia potentially, because he, if there's one thing he can do, it is shoot the ball. Right. So I think they're going to be a team that that'll be the chase, probably for the entirety of the season. But that starting 5, really, really good. I think what helps them a lot too this year is Josh Richardson is a guy who can credibly guard opposing point guards, and they didn't have that last year, and that kind of caused them some troubles. That's part of the reason Boston had success against them, because they didn't really have anybody who could cover Kyrie Irving. at times, so that was really hard for them. And then, they had some struggles with Kyle Lowry at points in the playoffs as well. So, big, you mentioned Horford being there and playing the five. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think he or Embiid, I'm putting kind of my max limit at about 65 games each for them. And I think you'll see them, probably only share the floor together about, what's that? Probably going to be about 50 to 60 times max. And then those guys will, kind of spell each other. So I think Horford will see plenty of time. And I think that's the best for both of them. It keeps Embiid healthy and fresh, keeps Horford healthy and fresh. They're at different stages in their career, and they don't have a great backup. I like Kyle O'Quinn, but Kyle Quinn's a kind of guy who I always like him more than what he ends up being. And as far as that bench goes right now, James Ennis, Mike Scott, Neto, O'Quinn, and then I think Zaire Smith and Thibault, the two young guys, battle it out for that last rotation spot. They both looked pretty good at Summer League. I thought Smith, looked really, really comfortable after he had that kind of host of injuries last year that he battled. And then, Thibault, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but his defense can put him in an NBA rotation right away.
Well, and that's something I want to talk about is the defensive potential of this team. I think that look, the shooting on the offensive end could be an issue. You look at their starting five that we've got laid out here, and pretty much everybody can shoot, but there's nobody that you're all that worried about shooting. There's nobody that you just think, my God, we can't let this guy pop open, because if they do, it's a three getting like JJ Redick obviously being gone is gonna hurt them in that regard. They all can shoot it. I think Josh Richardson's numbers are gonna come up because he's gonna get way more open looks than he was seeing with the Miami Heat. But the other end of the ball is where they just might make up for it, and I think that they actually can make up for it, and that's their defense. You look at this, just the starting five. I mean, that's aside from Embiid, that starting five is incredibly switchable, and Al Horford is so smart out there that I think that he's going to be able to do some good things for them on that end, just in terms of keeping the team structure sound. He's going to be good there. And then you've got Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson, and Ben Simmons, who are all big guys. I mean, you've got a huge lineup here for the 76ers that's going to be tough. I mean, if they can create turnovers and you get a guy like Simmons out in transition, you've got Joel Embiid and Horford who can both stretch the floor as trailers coming up. I think this is a team that's going to be really, really hard to score on. And I haven't even mentioned Embiid sitting at the rim ready to block everything yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then when he's not in there, Horford, can do some things as a rim protector as well. I think what's funny is you look at this group. Josh Richardson's their smallest guy at 6'6", and Harris is the weak link as the defender, and he's actually a at worst an average defender, probably even better than that. So it really is crazy with that. And just on the shooting, I've heard this repeatedly, over and over again. People with Josh Richardson's a good shooter, and he's not bad, 37% for his career, and he shot it at about 36 last year. Yeah. But the challenge is he's not Redick. You're not going to bend your defense, chasing him around. He's not a guy who's going to come off screens. I think they're going to play inside out a lot more than, outside in. And outside in's kind of become the game a little bit. But that's where Horford's passing, Horford's ability to step out becomes big. One thing, though, it's not as useful at the 4 as it is at the 5, because you can always have 4s who are comfortable defending on the perimeter. So it's going to be curious to see how Brett Brown goes about that and manufactures that offense. I know they would have liked to have kept JJ Redick if they could have, but there just wasn't a way to make that work. And at that point it was, all right, well, how do we do this? Where do we want to go? And that's the challenge. So, overall, I like it. With that, and I think they've got a good deep team that they're really gonna do some things with. Over under for this team, and all the over unders courtesy of our sponsor Bet Online. That's we when you're in the media, they very helpfully will send along all their tidbits to you and all their lines and over unders and those kind of things. So last I had seen, this may not be the exact live one, but this was the last one that I got, 53.5 for Philly. What do you think on that? That's a pretty big number.
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you what, I don't love their bench. I think losing TJ McConnell is going to hurt them maybe more than we think. I think he was a big part of their second unit. So I don't love the bench that they've got, but I look at that starting 5 and I just see so much talent there, especially on the defensive end. Yes, the shooting is a concern. I'm I'm pretty optimistic though. Like if you put a gun to my head and said who's going to be the best team in the Eastern Conference, I think it's going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. There's a number of teams that could put their name in there. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks being one of them. I mean, the East, just like the West this season, is a toss up. But I'm going to take the over on 53.5. I think that this is going to be a team after coming off of playoffs where they were a shot bouncing around the rim and then falling one way instead of the other away from possibly a finals run, right? So this is a team that is going to be coming out playing with fire, playing hungry because they know how close they were this last season. And so I'm going to take the over. I think that they're going to be able to become what I think is going to be the best team in the East this season.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the over. The last 2 years, as they've kind of come into their own here, 51 wins last year, 52 wins a year ago. And I think both of those were slightly better at the top Eastern conferences than this year. I think this year is a little bit weaker at the top. I'm with you. I think it's them in Milwaukee. And then kind of everybody, well, then a group of teams and then another group of teams. But I think, for these guys, I'm not going to put them quite at Milwaukee's level just yet. I think they're close though, but I'll also go with the over. I think 55, 56 wins, somewhere in that range. So I feel very comfortable picking the over for these guys, and I think they're going to do some stuff here. I think the ability. Now, what's interesting with this team, kind of looking beyond this year, they're now locked in and they are a tax team for the next couple of seasons. Right. They were able to avoid it this year, but next year when Simmons' big extension kicks in, they won't be able to avoid that. On next year's books, listen to these salaries. Tobias Harris, 34.4. Joel Embiid, 29.5. Al Horford, 27.5. And then that Simmons extension kicks in at 29.3. So that's, Trust the process. Those are some big numbers. That's it. Yeah, right. Trust the banker. Man.
Right, at this point.
There, right. And then Josh Richardson at 10.8. So, and then I know we wanted to talk about Al Horford's contract structure a little bit because it is a little unique. So let's break it down year by year. $28 million this year, then it goes down 500,000 each of the next two seasons. So 27.5 in the 2021 season, then 27 in the 21-22 season, and then that 22-23 season. So this is where it's interesting. The full guaranteed amount would be 26.5 million, but he's only guaranteed 14.5 million of that. And then what they did, which this is one of the more creative ways to structure a contract we've seen in a while. He has $14 million $12 million in bonuses in this contract. He gets $5 million if the team gets to the NBA Finals in 2020, 2021, or 2022. So any of the preceding 3 years. If they win the finals in any of those 3 years, the contract becomes fully guaranteed. So, Al Horford has a vested interest for this team to, win the finals because that's another $7 million for him. So $5 million if they get there in any of those 3 years, and then $7 million more if they win in any one of those 3 years. So, good on Philly to tie some stuff there. I thought that was a pretty cool contract structure. So I thought that was interesting. And if somebody asked before, like, why do you not look at the camera? My other screens where I have all my salary data, so I have to keep looking over there. So I apologize. That's my good side. So anyway, but yeah. So what do you think about that contract, though? That's an interesting one.
It's all good, Keith. I try to remind myself, too, to not look just at my laptop because sometimes I'm used to just the podcast element of it. I'm like, hey, I can look up salaries and all that. And I try to look at the camera as well. Look, the Al Horford deal is interesting. Like when it first came out and the full amount was announced, I went, I get it. Like, I understand why the 76ers would want this deal, but Al Horford at 33, I don't love paying him that much money just because I think there's a little bit of a decline there. And I like that the salary declines with him most likely, but I don't know if a $500,000 drop each season is going to really still give you bang for the buck in, say, the third year and fourth year. Obviously, that non-guaranteed portion of the fourth year helps unless they wind up winning a championship. I think it was the move that they had to make bringing him in, but I think it's a move that might sting a little bit when they hit year 3 and they're paying the tax on that deal. I think that's going to be kind of painful, perhaps even year 2, depending on how he does. I like Al Horford a lot. I think he's a nice piece. I think he can be a major cog in a championship team. But the question is it going to be worth what you're paying for him and the fact that it's going into the tax? And that's where I look at and what the 76ers have done this season, including the Ben Simmons signing, or re-signing, I should say, extension, where they increase his salary, but you still have the same problem with him where teams are literally running away from him when he's got the ball in his hands because he refuses to shoot outside. He can't shoot. And I wonder, looking at what the Sixers are locked into right here, I'm very high on this team. I'm just looking at the flip side here. There's a chance that this goes poorly for the 76ers. Like, this isn't a complete home run here. There is a flip side where things don't work out well with either the Al Horford contract or the Ben Simmons contract, depending on what the results are over these next few years.
Or the reality is even the Tobias Harris deal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the biggest one on the books, and that one could go south as well, because if he's the third or fourth guy in the pecking order, now you're kind of, well, geez, the highest paid guy at nearly $40 million a year, and he's, well, what is he? That's where it gets tricky. And on the Horford contract too is, I always say this, it's like when people screamed and yelled in Boston about they gave him a max deal a few years back, like, why is this guy a max player? Well, that's what it took to get him.
Right.
He wasn't leaving Atlanta, or he wasn't going to pass up on the Washington offer unless it was a full max deal. So now what you're looking at on this side of things is Philly had to go to nearly $100 million in guaranteed money to get him, because Boston was right there. And as late as that same Sunday, late afternoon, early evening, Celtics were trying to arrange a series of sign and trade deals to allow them to stay over the cap to then keep Horford and pay him. They were going to go to about $80 million is what I heard.
Okay.
In guarantees. They were about $20 million a year over 4 years. That's where they were at. They knew that would make them a heavy tax team, and that's what they were willing to do. So now, we'll see. I'm with you. I think the thing I worry about is, as he gets older, he probably needs to play the 5 more, because I think he could become a liability at the 4. Not this year, probably not next, but that third year, maybe that fourth year. And in that fourth year, it's only like half guaranteed, but that's still, $14 million on your books. And, if he's a 37-year-old guy who can't do so much, that starts to get really questionable. But, we'll see. That's I like that they tied those guarantees, because if they win a title, who cares, right? That's
That's
exactly the name of the game. They haven't won since, I want to say 1983. So, so we're 35, 36 years deep on this thing now. So, and then, I know we talked before the show, but the Celtics jumping up and down a pair of stars.
Yeah. Let's talk about Tampering.
Here's my thing is, and you're the Lakers guy, so you'll get I think where I'm coming
I know
from.
Tampering way too well at this point, Keith.
But, yeah, right. I know you do. But here's my thing is, everybody does it.
Yep.
Everybody, all 30 teams, because there's no way you reach agreement minutes after free agency opens unless you were talking to people. So in this year in particular, Kemba Walker just happened to be hanging out in Boston, and just, a full max deal with a player option was all agreed to, seemingly hours ahead of the deadline. What, a whole day even, I think we started hearing that was done. So I think that's stupid. The thing is, unless you're doing what Magic Johnson did, where you're openly on television talking about how much you love a guy and can't wait to, be able to talk to him and those kind of things.
And winking, right?
No one cares. Right. Yeah. Winking. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one cares. So this is why I do kind of wonder, like, was Boston really that mad, jumping up and down, or were they, were really that angry? If they were, well, that's silly on their part, and that's dumb. And if they weren't, and if they weren't, well, yeah, of course they weren't, because everybody else is doing it too. So my guess is truth lies somewhere in the middle. They were mad, but and the reality is, look yourselves in the mirror, because you obviously did the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's what I don't get about this whole story. And again, the story was that the Celtics were mad at the 76ers for tampering with Al Horford, and they were mad that it looked like they were going to come to an agreement with Horford. They were going to bring him back, and that's why that last year of his deal was being declined, and they were going to work out something long-term. And then suddenly there's this big offer out there for him when teams can't offer anything to players officially yet. But again, we knew it was about 24 hours ahead of free agency starting. We knew Kemba Walker was going to the Celtics.
Yeah.
And
how did that happen?
Yeah, they clearly didn't talk, right? They were playing by the rules. I don't see the Celtics doing that, like getting that mad over the Al Horford thing when they were doing the exact same thing with Kemba Walker, and the Nets were doing it with Kyrie Irving. And I mean, look, it was the entire league pretty much just ignored tampering rules this summer and did it I mean, look, it always happens, but they were so brazen about it this year that I kind of think, look, there's nothing Adam Silver can really do about it, right? You can't start like big brothering the entire league or anything like that. It's going to happen, but I just don't think there's a whole lot of truth to the Celtics being incredibly upset over what happened. Maybe they're bummed about losing Horford. That's fine, but I just don't see them being, so mad that they would maybe launch an investigation or anything like that over tampering in that situation, because they did it and everyone else did it too.
Those in glass houses, right? Like,
Exactly.
What is that? Those in glass houses should change their clothes on the basement. I think something along those lines.
That's it.
But it's it's also dumb. So I'm gonna make this commitment to everybody, because no one likes this conversation unless it is open, brazen, public. On the record tampering, we're not going to talk about it anymore, because there's really no point. It's just a dumb wasted topic. So let's close out with Philly.
Yeah.
We're not going to do grades, because grades are tough and they're kind of pointless. But we can do thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumb neutral, I guess, and Roman gladiator style here. So I'll let you go first. Philly, thumbs up or thumbs down on their offseason?
So Philly, I am going to go, and look, I like teams when they're aggressive. I like teams that go for it, right? And then they take the opportunity. I like that they brought back the sign and trade that we've seen a number of teams do this season, and so they figured out, we're going to pay. We're going to do everything we can to try and win a championship right now. We're keeping the guys we like with Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. I'm going to say, as much as I have some questions about the team, I still think they're going to be really good. I'm going to say thumbs up on Philadelphia 76ers offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to go thumbs up as well. I'm going to tilt it just a little, though, because I think the Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick losses are very big. So I want to see, they're just going to look very differently. This is a team I could see. You're going to hear me probably say this just because of the amount of change there was in the league. I think a team like the Orlando Magic that has really good continuity and is bringing everybody back could get off to a really quick start, because they're the same team, basically, where a team like Philly, I think it could take them a couple weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks to really kind of get into a rhythm and a groove. I think, having a full training camp for these guys, having all those guys healthy and ready to go is going to be really important. I don't like guys skipping out on playing for their country in the World Cup this summer, but I get it. There things that got to happen with all these new guys there. So it's, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, thumbs up for me as well.